Alrighty. Hopefully this works. I hope you guys can all hear me. That was a bit of a delay, guys. I am very sorry for that. Seems that Windows decided to do a major version upgrade on my machine. I'm not quite sure why it suddenly decided to do that. Well, I know why, because when you restart, it'll replace the normal restart options with apply updates and restart. And I think there is a option somewhere in the list to restart without doing the update. But the one that you normally click on is the update. And I had to restart because I had installed a few things on that machine. And then, of course, that's Windows. You install something, it has to restart. Yeah. So, yeah, that was fun and games. Well, yes, Ahil, I do have to admit that considering this was a major update and not just applying security patches, the fact that it took only 45 minutes in total, I think, that's pretty fast for a proper version update. I'm guessing that it did the download probably earlier in the week, and it's been sitting on the disk for all this time. This machine, so I've got two machines here, one on which I'm developing, which you guys are seeing the screen from, and then that machine over there that I'm using as my stream machine. That's the guy that just decided to update. This guy that I'm working on is still telling me that it wants to update, so it's going to go through the same thing. So we are not doing any more restarts tonight. But yeah, lots of fun having that happen 10 minutes before you start your stream. Yeah, it'll be cool when we have those updates in Discord. Yeah. Yeah, who knows if Microsoft decides to need to buy Discord. Then again, so far, Microsoft owning GitHub has been mostly pretty much positive. So yeah, hello everybody. Hello, it's Alex, Sam, Zahil, Rods, Jan. Who else is here? Asterion, Declin, Andrew. I hope you guys all stuck around for the fun and games here. Oh yeah, that's terrible. That's my biggest nightmare. I tend to be pretty good at backing up stuff, but there are certain things that if my hard disk crashes right now, I'd be very sad. Now I've gone through that myself like a year ago, I guess. But that wasn't a Windows update. That was my own stupid mistake fault that I spilled water. One of the joys of working in VR is that you're not aware of your surroundings, and when you're in a rush trying to do something. Hi, Lamberto, nice for you to join. Yeah, then instead of picking up your controller, you sometimes pick up a glass of water, and while it didn't cause, luckily, any more damage than my hard drive. Some of it really weirdly is that there's like only 3 or 4 drops of water that actually hit my laptop. The rest went onto the table and didn't actually get near the laptop. But it was exactly above where the SSD was, and the SSD had gotten wet, and that just killed the SSD, which was ouch. So that said, yep, pretty good. Actually, I want to go and close that. Don't want that anymore. What was I saying? Yeah, that's that. Using GitLab for a lot of my stuff. All the important stuff that I'm working on, all my source code and stuff like that, is backed up regularly to GitHub, which I'm quite happy about. My biggest fear is losing my password file, which I make sure I have backups of at least 2 machines. That would be really my nightmare scenario. If, God forbid, asteroid hits this house, then yeah, I have a problem because I won't be able to access anything anymore. Because I've been long thinking about putting it on a, putting my master key on a USB stick and putting it in a safe somewhere or something like that. I'm just being paranoid, probably. Anyway, there's a couple of changes. I don't know who of you guys follow me on Twitter, but I posted 2 pictures yesterday or the day before because no more green screen behind me. That's actually my wall that we're seeing behind it, and my ugly cupboard that's still in on the list of things to replace with something nice. I bought an extra desk, so I have now a desk that's allowed me to actually move and face a different wall, which also means that that wall is now behind me. My old desk where I used to sit is now to the right of me. But it means I've got a lot more space. I actually have my monitor and my primary machine here, then my secondary machine behind me with all the other fun tools like my drawing tablet and my daughter's keyboard. She likes to make music on my computer, and a lot more space. What I'm a little unhappy about is my beautiful Horizon poster, which I'm very proud of, signed by the development team. I've got some friends over at Gorilla who I visited the last time I was in Holland. It keeps falling down. I'm in a rental place, so I am not allowed to drill holes in the wall, which means that I can only hang things up with sticky stuff, and that frame's too heavy. It doesn't stay up. So yeah, that's been fun in the reorganization, but it is something that I do like having in the background. It sort of dresses everything up a little bit. But I'm having some ideas and plans to do more with that because basically, that table is pretty much empty. I've got a few things on there right now that normally are on the side just to have something in the background. But I'm actually thinking about putting my spare headsets there on the stand or something like that, just to dress everything up a little bit. So yeah, no more green screen as a result, which I'm kind of happy about because one of the things that I never liked about using a green screen, first of all, I had to take it down and put it back up every time I streamed. But the second thing is, this room that I'm in, I'm now using as my office. This is where I do my development work. This is where I do my streams. And of course, as someone who is primarily doing VR work for development, I need space to actually be able to walk around with when I'm testing things out with the headset. And this space is already pretty much the minimum space that you need for some proper things. So having the green screen in the way, having to also move my lighthouse sensors in places where the tracking is not ideal, again, because when I put the green screen up, then I lose all the tracking, and that means I can't do VR stuff on stream, which is annoying. So yeah, I'm pretty happy that I don't have to put it on. There's a whole bunch of cleanup that I still need to do. But yeah, that'll mean that I can actually walk around this room and work on some of the VR stuff that actually requires me to walk around. I'm pretty happy about. So that is a first little update of the stream. Is we have a bit of a better workspace now, and the camera is still a bit at an odd angle, so I'm sitting quite to the left of the screen. For you guys on the right, for me on the left, I see everything in the mirror here. Yeah, it's what it is, right? It's not much that we can do about it. Also, I needed to hook up a whole bunch. I don't have enough USB ports on that machine, so that's something that I still need to sort out. So I hope that everything is working well with the USB hub that I put on it. I was a little bit worried that might cause some bandwidth issues with my microphone. I remember having problems with that before, when in the early days of the stream. But so far it seems to be okay. It seems to be behaving. So yeah, let me know if the sound quality is fine or if there's issues or stuff like that. Other than that, yeah, I only got the desk yesterday, or the day before. Yesterday? Probably it was yesterday. So yeah, I'm still moving stuff around and making it better. I actually want a different tripod for my camera. That's probably the last thing that I'll invest in for the time being. So yeah, cool. As far as this week, it's been a really, really crazy week for me. A good week though, a lot of fun week. I have been playing around with this guy, my little Android phone. And actually having a broken version of Godot 4 running on it earlier in the week. And that has led to a whole new adventure this week in trying to figure out why things were crashing and why things were not working the way that they should. And the conclusion that we have so far, and obviously we're still looking into what exactly is going on. When we're looking at Vulkan, obviously Vulkan is being developed, right? It's a relatively new graphics API. So it came out a couple of years ago as Vulkan 1.0, had certain capabilities, and then at some point, well, one of the major things that was new, that was very good at in Vulkan, was like computer shaders that were suddenly in there. They obviously were already introduced in OpenGL, so that sort of moved over. And then Vulkan 1.1 came out that had a whole bunch of enhancements. And one of the enhancements that was in Vulkan 1.1 that we make use of is this thing called subgroups. I still need to figure out exactly what subgroups do and don't do, because that's all stuff John built. But it has a lot to do with the ability to run things in parallel and to be able to share memory between different processes on the GPU. So that's part of the whole clustered shader that I talked about last week. That makes heavy use of that functionality. And that's all good. Now, today we are at the Vulkan 1.2 days. A whole bunch of new things have been added that are generally only available on desktop GPUs. So most of the Android GPUs are either Vulkan 1.0, in which case you don't have all these new features, which is one of the reasons why I'm building, under guidance of John, I'm building a toned down renderer specifically for mobile that doesn't use some of the features that are required on these, that only work on the newer devices. And then you have a whole bunch of like this one. This is a Moto G. This is not even an expensive phone. This is pretty much a budget phone, I guess. It was about $300, so not an expensive in the phone world. That's a Vulkan 1.1 phone. I was actually quite surprised with how capable that little phone is. Except it wouldn't run. It crashed. So the first part of this whole equation is, what version of Vulkan are you on? Now the second part of that equation is, okay, now you've got your Vulkan context running and everything is, now you've got to write some shaders. And in OpenGL days, shaders were written in GLSL. In DirectX, they are written in HLSL. Which is, what we type in. Those get compiled, and then what's actually running on the GPUs is that compiled version. That's right. So on Vulkan, we compile it to an intermediate bytecode, I guess it is. Which is called SpirV. So SpirV was already the library that this is, or the environment that this is for OpenGL. And we're now using SpirV, which is then the Vulkan version, or the Vulkan capable version of that. Where we're still using GLSL. GLSL code gets compiled to SpirV, and SpirV is what then eventually gets parsed by Vulkan and results in the shader code that runs on your hardware. Now the funny thing is that the versions of SpirV do not run in line with the versions of Vulkan. So you had SpirV 1.0 come out together with Vulkan 1.0, and then there was a 1.1 that came out, and a 1.2 that came out that still all ran under Vulkan 1.0. And then when Vulkan 1.1 came out, we went to SpirV 1.3, and that had all the extensions, all the new features in there that, for instance, allowed you to use subgroups. And since then, there's a 1.4, and now there's a 1.5. and that runs on Vulkan 1.2. So if you go to 1.2, you can use the 1.5 features in SpirV. So far, so good. So we had hard-coded it so far to run in SpirV 1.3, which means that everything falls over the moment that you have a Vulkan 1.0 device. So that's something that I worked on earlier in the week, where we added the code in that we detect which version of Vulkan do we actually support. Make sure that SpirV gets told, or actually, it's not SpirV that gets told, it's this thing called GSLang that actually does the compilation of GLSL code to SpirV bytecode. So we need to tell that, okay, we're running Vulkan 1.1 and we're running SpirV 1.3. Or we're running Vulkan 1.2 and SpirV 1.5, or etc. etc. So we're basically telling it, okay, what is the dialect that we can support? And that's what you compile, and that runs then on the device, and everybody's hunky-dory and happy and sweet. At least the theory. So first we thought we were running the wrong version of SpirV, and that's why it was crashing. And that it just, didn't support compute or something like that, which is, part of what we're using. Looks like that wasn't the case. It was actually, I got it to run by going down to SpirV 1.2 because at that point in time, the stuff that broke just resulted in shaders not compiling, and instead of it crashing by running a incorrect shader, it just didn't run anything, and it allowed me to do 2D stuff on my Android phone. But yeah, it was correct. SpirV 1.3 is correct. So then we went on to finding out, okay, what are the actual things that it's breaking on? What are we using that it's supposed to be supporting, but causing the phone to crash the moment that logic is inside of a shader? And that's when we found out that when we look at subgroups and the subgroup implementation, I might actually have that here. Let me go and move this over. What drawing tablet am I using? I have a Uion Canvas 13, which I'm quite happy about it. I'm not much of a graphics artist. I can't draw for the life of me. My daughter is the one who's really into drawing and wanting to get into drawing on computers, because she want to draw on paper. So she's the one who's using it most. I just like sketching things, and I think I'm going to be using it for some of my tutorial videos to be able to sketch some things and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a cool little device. Pretty happy about it. Whenever you're in a hurry, everything breaks. Yeah, that's the way that it goes. Do I back up my assets data to GitLab too? Yes, at this point in time I do, because my assets are pretty small. Again, most of my work that I'm doing is things like tutorials or things for supporting this stream. Once I go to bigger projects, which I do hope to get to at some point in time, I need to look into that. Because yeah, I think I'll run into problems. GitLab, you need to do some special things to be able to do larger files. So yeah, that's something that I'll need to address at some point in time. No, I did not paint my wall green, so I think my landlord would really be upset with me if I do that. And yeah, indeed, something like that I might do with strips or something. The big problem, of course, is I need to do something that's removable, and I could remove off of the wall, and that doesn't damage paint and all that sort of stuff. And 3M has got these special hooks, but the ones that I bought were too small. They didn't have enough sticking power to hold up something as heavy as that poster. So yeah, so this is the whole subgroup page that explains what subgroups do and what subgroups are. But the most important thing was implementing this new function that they added to Vulkan 1.0 that gives us a nice little struct that tells us what is supported and what isn't. And then this little bit is the bit that is important, is that the Vulkan 1.1 has as a minimum guarantee that subgroups need to be supported in the compute stage, and subgroups need to be supporting the basic operation feature set. And indeed, my phone does those two. It actually does one more. It has this thing, this feature called vote. Not quite sure what it does. Maybe vote for your favorite politician. Don't think so. But that's the only thing that the phone supports. Now, Godot requires this functionality to work in the fragment shader, which it doesn't. And it needs a whole bunch of the other features that... the other operations, which are also not supported. And the problem then, of course, is that because SpirV, or actually GLS Lang, has no idea that these things are not supported, it will compile a shader happily with those things in it. And the moment that the phone, or the GPU tries to run that, instead of it saying, this is not supported, I'm not going to do this, it just blows up. It just crashes. There you go. Segfault. End of story. Bye app. Yeah, you're in rough water. So that's how far we've gotten. It took me most of the week to work on that and do all the testing and go down the wrong route for a little while. So yeah, wasting a lot of time trying to figure that out. But yeah, there we go. Jose, is it possible to render an object in the left eye and another in the right? I want to create a video player, but I need to... Yeah, so that's actually been brought up a number of times. It is possible, but it's a hack. It is something that I've actually got on the list of improvements that I want to do for Godot 4, where you're actually... you'll have information in the shader which eye you're rendering for, so that you can switch textures per eye and stuff like that, or adjust positions per eye if there's some additional offsetting that you want to do. But right now, that is not possible. The only thing that you can do is, and I don't have the code ready here, but I think if you look at NeoSpark's toolkit that he built for the Quest, I think he's got it in there somewhere. But you can look at the projection matrix that is being used, and because the left eye is always offset to the left and the right eye is always offset to the right, and that offset is actually part of the projection matrix, you can actually check whether that offset is positive or negative, and there, in that way you can figure out whether you're rendering something on the left eye or whether you're rendering something on the right eye. So yeah, it's hacky, but it works, and it at least allows you to swap textures between the eyes. But that's really as far as it's currently possible. So that really is a use case that's not very well supported at this point in time. And again, it is something that I want to take along in the rework that we're doing for Godot 4. So yeah. Discord is breaking my Uion software. Impulse is already good. Ah. Okay. Well, luckily I use Discord on this machine, not on that machine. So I haven't run into that problem yet. But that sounds really weird. Yeah, the 3M stuff is really good, so I might look for those. No, in this case, subgroups has nothing to do with signals. Jan, this is, this has got to do with parallel processing on the GPU and sharing data and stuff like that. And again, I'm not completely up to date with this yet because I'm still learning half of this stuff. I've been doing OpenGL for the last 10 years. Vulkan is still pretty new to me. So yeah, it's a pretty steep learning curve being thrown in the deep end like this. But I'm slowly starting to get the hang of it. I'm slowly starting to get a bit of an overview of how Vulkan is put together, or how it's structured, how you talk to it, how you do things with it. But I think it'll take a little while before I'm at the same level as Jean. So I got a bit of catching up to do. Hi, Ivan. How you going? So yeah, that's really what has been the thing that has kept me most busy this week. As a result, I've also had my head in the sand a little bit this week, because this has been this has taken a lot of my time, learning about this and trying out a whole bunch of things and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Coming out of also last week where a lot of this started. I'm now at a point where I think we've come to grips with what we need to check to know what the capabilities is, so that we can make decisions on that and make sure that Godot detects the right things and makes the right decision and says, okay, I'm going to use the the high-end renderer that needs to have all this stuff supported, or hey, it's not supported, I'm going to go and switch to what we've called the mobile renderer, although I think mobile is a bit too constrained a name. I think that renderer is going to have a wider application than just mobile, VR being one of them. I think that's for VR, especially for mobile VR, but also for other types of VR, because there's so much overhead in rendering stereoscopic, you might want to take that step back from the high-end renderer. Although again, when you have the power, when you have the GPU, and especially seeing that the new Vulkan renderer, that's it really runs remarkably well. So it's going to be interesting to see how well it behaves in VR. So yeah, that's really what I've been focusing on right now. There's a couple of PRs that I'm waiting on approval so that I can take the next step, and finish off that mobile renderer. Hopefully I'll get there somewhere this week, next week at the latest. I really hope that that now that we sorted all these things out, it's gonna we're gonna move a lot faster through the things that are left, because I can't wait. Once that is finished, I can actually start focusing on OpenXR and start focusing on getting OpenXR to run on Godot 4. And that has a whole suite of its own problems that we are running into and looking at right now, and sort of figuring out, okay, all the stuff that we now learned from the OpenXR plugin, how is that applicable to Godot 4, and how are we going to do everything there? A potato renderer and master race renderer. That's one way to call it. Okay. So I'm just having a look at some of the things. Coming by. What time are we on? 10 o'clock. Well, it's not that late yet. What else is there worth talking about this week? Last week we had some juicy things because there were some fun things that, fun. There were some things that had been happening during the week about some crazy discussions and stuff like that. I'm running some commentary on the stuff during the week. This week has been pretty calm, actually. Trying my hardest to think about whether there was anything noteworthy. Exporting a entire game, targeting JVM or CLR. Well, I guess it kind of does that when you look at the WebAssembly version, sort of portable. I don't really see that happening, and the reason why is that while you can compile the code in a way that it can run on these different systems, when you look at, well, I guess to some extent things like Vulkan will be cross-portable. But right now, when you look at all the different platform implementations, because it's not just recompiling the C source code, right? That's the only bit that really becomes portable. You still have every platform implemented differently because of the unique differences between platforms. And when you look at games, that is a much more important thing to give attention to, because that is generally where a lot of performance is lost if you try and not target specific needs of a platform. So yeah, I don't see that as something that will boil to the top of the priority list anytime soon. Who knows? It might be at some point. In theory, you could. In theory, you could already compile Godot, with the C compilers that compile to CLR. But I think I don't know what the platform differences, the impact of that would be for a game engine. I haven't really ever gone down. I'm not a big fan of that sort of stuff. I get code portability from a application point of view, from just a normal desktop application where performance isn't as much of a concern. But when you're looking at games, you really want the core of your game engine to be as efficient as possible. And compiling to machine code specific for a platform remains the most optimal situation there. The stuff on top, again, this is always the discussion when you look at people saying, well, I don't want to use GDScript because GDScript is so slow. Yeah, it doesn't need to be fast because it's control logic. But you want your core stuff to be as fast as possible. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. Let's say it that way. I'm a fan of it for the that we have C# support in Godot, and that compiles to CLR, and you compile that once and you deploy that to many platforms. You don't have to, as a game developer, you don't have to recompile your bit of source code for every different platform. You just compile it on whatever machine you're in, and it just becomes portable together. Combine it with the runtime for your platform. That's all fine. That's where it excels. But I think for the core of the graphics engine, I prefer that to be C++ code compiled to the specific needs of the platform that you're deploying to. But at the same time, I'm also conscious that I come from a time where you needed to get every inch of performance out of that. And while that is still valid today for the top end of the games that are being created, if you're a AAA studio and you're making the latest and greatest game, you want that to run as fast as possible on every platform that you deploy. For a lot of indie games, the speed of development is often more important than the speed of execution. You're never going to have the assets at a level that required that utter amazing performance, getting the last few cycles out of there. So yeah, I don't know how important that bit is. Then again, Godot is a C++ engine at heart. It's already compiling to all the platforms. So, I'd see it as a distraction, not as a bonus. But that's my opinion on CLR. And JVM, don't get me started about Java Virtual Machine. I hate Java Virtual Machine with a passion. And that honestly is not because Java is bad. That's not because the Java Virtual Machine is bad. So they're actually both pretty good. I've just been burned especially in business. In business software, I've been burned in the past by the whole ecosystem that got built around Java. So, yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? If provided that they solve or abstract enough of the platform differences, and that bit I don't know, because again, there's a difference between compiling code and having that code be portable, and having your OS APIs be portable. And there are huge differences. You look at that right now. Godot runs in a browser. The whole back end is different. You cannot have the same methodology for storing projects and accessing the file system on that environment as you have on a normal desktop. So there's a completely different paradigm at work there. And I don't think you can really abstract it. The same with phones. On iOS and Android, you're dealing with a structurally different back end. So I don't really know how that is solved. And when you look at consoles, that's even worse. They often require you to build against completely platform dependent SDKs. And I have no idea how, if those things are even properly supported in something like Mono. That could be. The Mono guys might be focusing on that sort of stuff, which would be really cool. But I don't know. I've never really dived into that sort of stuff. So. Right. Still trying to think about what else has happened this week before we get back into our dungeon game. Mine is drawing a bit of a blank, to be honest. It's really been a week where I've just been focusing on, why is Android crashing, and what do I all need to check and make sure that that we switch between the different renderers and stuff like that. I do anything on the XR side? Because all the OpenHMD stuff was last week. No, didn't do much on the XR front this week, actually. Bit of a shame. I played around a little bit. I've been working on a little side project for myself that I need to get to a point where it's actually doing something. So that's something for the future. No, I don't actually have much more news. So unless someone's got some more questions, I'm gonna go and start back into our little dungeon game, I guess. So yeah, 10:15. That's not too bad, actually. Okay. Where were we? Actually, let's start there with where were we? Code that never does anything is my favorite kind. Yeah, especially when it looks very complex and you don't dare to touch it, but you really wonder where it's getting called from. All right, so last week we got to a point where our characters nicely walk and take turns, and we can end the turn even if we have some action points left, and we have some little mini dragons being spawned into the game right now, who don't actually do anything yet. I haven't taken any time to add spawn points into any of the other tiles, so it's only these tiles that are currently getting dragons, and I haven't had any time to add any other enemies into the game. So we're really still where we left off last week. All right. So one thing that I added in for today's stream is I actually want to start moving some of the functionality into an add-ons folder and into a plugin that's in the add-ons folder. Basically with the idea that the code that's usable to make another dungeon crawler type game would be in the plugin, so that everybody can just grab it and start building a game like this. And the things that are specific to this version of the game are in our main project folder. So the dungeon generation code will be in the plugin. Our player character and enemy character scripts will be in the plugin, but the actual tiles, the actual player characters, the actual enemies, they will all be in the main folder. Yeah, that's the best one, Zil. Hi, November Dev. We just got started on continuing with a little dungeon game. So, when we look at add-ons, actually, I already have an add-ons folder because we had our little typing add-on in there, which I did end up removing because it was a little bit over the top. I'm still looking for a less over-the-top plugin that gives us some feedback on screen about keyboard control. I might look into, because OBS has got a few plugins that do that sort of stuff, but I've got OBS running on my other computer. This computer is sending everything through an Elgato, and it's the Elgato that's actually recording. And my little laptop over there is just, pushing the stream through. Vector 3 up, exactly. No brackets in there, I think. I think it's just Vector 3 up. Anyway, so let's go and create a new folder, and we're going to call that folder Godot. Do I do a dash or underscore? I do dash dungeon. That's going to be our dungeon add-on. There we go. Perfect. Now, there isn't currently any editor functionality in here, but I do want to start setting that stuff up. And I always forget how to do that. So, let's go into the docs for creating a plugin. Making plugins. Now, this is going to be interesting because every time that I try this part of it doesn't actually work for me. Let's just try it. Maybe we get lucky today. Maybe it's been fixed. Create. So the plugin name is going to be our dungeon. Let's call that our dungeon toolkit. This is going to be res addons Godot dungeon. Tab is actually in that one. Okay, well, that's neat. And yeah, let's keep that on 1.0. You're going to keep that in. Now, this one, I always forget whether it actually needs to have a full folder name. So let's go and cheat a little. Lucky, OpenXR was the last thing that I did something with, because my OpenXR plugin actually has. Okay, so that doesn't actually need to have a folder name. Could not create. Okay. All right. This is what I hate, is when it fails, I have to start over again. But we only need to specify the name. It's actually automatically going into the add-ons folder as a result. So dungeon. So all that I need to do is put this in here. A little toolkit for creating dungeon folder. Boom. Oh yeah, cleaned it up. Now, can't remember what exactly I typed last time, but good enough for me. This time it worked. Okay, so all along I did that part of it wrong. Now I have a feeling that if I hadn't created this folder, it would have created that for me, which would have been actually pretty cool. It creates our little plugin automatically with an enter tree and exit tree in there. I'm not quite sure why those two are in there. Oh, it is for enter tree and exit tree. Okay. All right. Now, like I said, we currently don't actually have anything that we add to the editor, but we might eventually do something with that, which could be really cool also to do on stream. So I need to think of something that we can actually add into the editor to help us with our maze creation. All right, so we can see that our entry is in here. It's active by default. Now, one thing that's really important to know is that a plugin being enabled or disabled refers to whether the components that are added to the editor are installed or not. So if that is disabled, this never runs, and you therefore don't have, that stuff. But your scripts and all that sort of stuff are still in there and still usable. So, yeah, it doesn't mean that your plugin is completely gone when you deactivate. Okay, didn't really catch the Pirates of the Caribbean reference, but cool. Should bring my parrot in next time. Hi, Tamansky. Nice that you could join us. Hope you enjoy it. All right. So I'm not too worried about that. I'm very surprised that for once creating a plugin actually worked. I wonder what I did wrong last time, and maybe again something to do with the directories that I put in. Not sure. So let's go and start moving a few things into our add-ons folders that we actually want to have in there. So I'm going to create a new folder here. Maze. Actually, no, I'm just going to call that maze. There we go. So we're going to put all the things that are important to a maze in there. Probably a few things around the rooms. And let's also create actually a folder for characters. All right. Now the other thing is I want to make sure that no scene is currently loaded. Let's close all these as well, because anything that is loaded gives us problems when we move stuff. All right, what's in helpers? That is just for the rooms that we have. Objects is our torch, so that all doesn't matter. Is that part of here? That is. That's the pointer detect over there. Okay, so all these we're going to not move to trash. That's not a good idea. We're going to go and move them into here. Okay. Okay, that is okay. I'm not worried about that. Hopefully it hasn't stopped it from moving everything. It looks like everything is in there. So that's probably because this is still loaded at this point in time. That's fine. So we're probably going to have to Actually, let's go and do that between all these things. I should have just gone to my project loader. That's, I think, a risk problem with the class name. It's not properly unloading that script, so it still has that class in memory. Now suddenly it is in a different location. It thinks, hey, I'm loading something that I already have. So I'm expecting this to be happy. No errors in my log. That looks good. All right. Okay. Now, one of the things that's going to be interesting is figuring out how much of this is accessing our global state. I think I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. But that is probably something that we need to start looking at and cleaning up, because we obviously need to be careful how much we access around our global state. Yeah, for instance, here we are accessing our global state. And we are accessing our A star somewhere. Okay, then I think those should just move into here as well. So we call those autoload. Close all. So let's go and create an autoload folder. And it might mean that we will end up extending these if there is certain logic that we want to have in the plugin and certain things that we extend from that. I'm actually going to go and move all these into autoload. But again, we might move some of this back. Now, this one is definitely going to be part of our dungeon plugin. But something like this might be. We'll see. Zahil, no. Godot is definitely fast enough to make a lot of AAA quality games. But you won't make that in Godot. I mean, you look something like Horizon Zero Dawn. The amount of optimization and very specific logic that went in there to make that game work. That is where you might run into some shortcomings. And again, you know, this is the age-old discussion of where do you put logic. GDScript is great for this sort of stuff, and actually, when I look at the fact that I've got A star here in GDScript, this is the sort of code that you would normally port to C++ or C# or something like that. In our case, because of the use case that we have here, it's fine. But if you would do a big RTS game with thousands of actors, no, don't do it this way. You're going to have to either add that logic as a plugin or something like that. Now, again, Godot has a built-in A star system that I'm not using, which is a really capable A star system. But still, when you look at something like having thousands of RTS actors, you might want to rethink how you do things. So yeah, that's where, you know, Godot in its current state probably will give you a few ceilings, especially if you yourself do not have the background and knowledge how to solve those issues. Because that is I think the biggest problem when you're talking about, can I make a AAA game? Because there's two sides to that discussion, right? There is the side, can my game engine do what it needs to do? And that is really dependent on what game you're making. But the second side of that question is, do I have the capabilities? You know, or does my team have the capabilities? You know, again, you look at something like Horizon Zero Dawn, you're talking about a game that was made by dozens of people. You know, you can grab Unreal if you don't have the right group of people to make the game that you want to make. Even Unreal is not going to help you, right? So that's always the two things that you need to weigh up is, you know, do I have the right people to make the game that I want to make? Do we have enough experience and knowledge in how to make a game like that? Do I have enough people to create all the assets that I need to create? You know, how am I going to fill my game with assets? You know, I've even got this little dungeon game, right? That's one of the reasons why I'm using procedural generation to create the maps. I don't have time to build, you know, half a dozen maps for things, but it's not going to be a fun game if all that I have is oh, it's not open anymore. Oh. All that I have is these tiles, right? It's going to get pretty boring pretty quickly. Eventually, if I want to turn this from a little stream build game thing to teach you guys how do you build a game like this, to a full-fledged, here's a dungeon crawlers with multiple levels, different areas, story in there. You know, it's a whole different ballgame. And then it becomes a thing, okay, what do you define as triple A? You know, is it the level of polish? Is it, you know, the difference between a big studio that has, you know, a couple of dozen people employed to make a really sizable game, or can an indie group of, you know, maybe 5 people make a game that you judge as AAA just because of the quality of the assets and how it looks and how well it's put together. Godot's ceiling lies in, okay, what is your game about? You build something like this, a dungeon crawler, you build, you know, you name it, Godot can do it. You want to do something like that? Not yet. Maybe someday it will have all the tools and all the capabilities in there. Right now, unless you yourself add in all the stuff that is required to make an open world game like Horizon Zero Dawn, it's and you know, the difficulty in that whole discussion that people tend to miss. You know, they say, "Oh, I need occlusion, or I need a terrain engine, or I need a dialogue scripts engine." There is a big difference between having the base functionality that you can create your average type game with, and something as specialized as, you know, an open world game like Horizon, or an open world game like Far Cry. You know, those are probably my 2 favorite examples where, yes, Guerrilla now has Decima, I think their engine is called, you know, that came out of their development of Killzone, and then they repurposed that engine for Horizon and really built it out, and got to a point that for an open world game, that engine is, you know, is broader than what it needs to be to just build Horizon Zero Dawn, which is why Kojima took it over and built what's the game called, Death Stranding with it, which is an amazing looking game, and I played it for about 20 minutes and got bored with it. Maybe I should try and come back to it at some point in time, because it does look really amazing, and I am intrigued by wanting to know what that game is actually about and where it ends. But oh my god, that's a boring game. Sorry, Kojima, but that's my first impression of Death Stranding. And Far Cry is the same. You know, you can see it. You know that they're now at what, 5 Far Cry. Well, you can't even call it 6 anymore, because then you had 5, and then it became New Dawn, and you had the Primal one that they made, and then New Dawn 2, I think. So many of these games that they created by just reusing that engine over and over again to make that sort of game, to a point where it's very repetitive now, even though they're beautiful games. But those engines are really highly optimized to do that type of game with. And Godot is a very different game engine. Godot is trying to be a game engine that has a much broader usage. So, yeah. And again, you know, the thing that people miss is, again, you know, so you make a terrain engine. Unless you make something very specialized to make one type of game, it's going to fail on other points. You know, terrain engine for an open world game is very different to a terrain engine for, let's say that you want to create a game like The Last of Us or Uncharted or dare I say Tomb Raider, and Tomb Raider nowadays is pretty open world as well, and pretty, uh, you know, no, Tomb Raider nowadays, when you look at the engine that's behind Tomb Raider, has got a lot of similarities to an engine like this in my opinion, in setup, or Just Cause and Far Cry and all those sort of things. But you compare that to Uncharted / The Last of Us / that sort of games where it's you're not in an open world. You're not in a map that you can continuously explore in any direction. You're in a single level. It's a level-based game. They're pretty big set pieces. You drop in a complete city block, so they're not small levels, and they need LOD systems to render that properly. But it's a very different terrain system. It doesn't need the chunk loading that would be in an open world and that sort of thing. So you have all these different systems, and they all come with their own complexities and their own like I said, like in an open world game, you're dealing with chunk loading. You're dealing with, you don't have the entire map of the world loaded in memory. That doesn't work. So you only have in memory, you only have in the GPU what is near you, and you might have some of the far away terrain in a lower level of detail so that you can see the mountains in the distance and stuff like that. But as you move through a map, it needs to load in whatever you're moving to, and it will discard whatever is now behind you or too far away from you. And that isn't just the map. That is everything that's on the map. It's your NPCs that are on the map. What happens when part of your world gets unloaded because you're too far away from it, but a NPC that's important to a story element is in that part of the world. How do you deal with that? There's no generic terrain engine that you can put into a jack of all trades game engine like Godot that would just do that. It's very specifically designed for that type of game, working in that sort of way and organizing all the the game assets and that's the problem is you suddenly start getting very specialized logic that is required for one type of game. That's really the juggle behind it. And again, when you look at something like that, there is nothing wrong with that. And even if you let's say that tomorrow I get a big team together of experienced people and we're going to build a competitor to Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm only naming that because of my poster behind. It's an easy grab. I could do that I could do that in Godot. I could use Godot as my base, but it would mean that all the specialized stuff that I need to build in order to make that type of game work, I wouldn't be building in GDScript. I would either be adding core modules to Godot and do a personal build of Godot, or I would do that in plugins. Because now I'm building something that will never be part of the core because it's so specific to one genre of games. That's really the way off. And at that point in time, it's no longer, can I make a AAA game in Godot? If you have the knowledge and experience, you can build any game in any engine. You can build it in anything, because it's just a matter of how much time you invest in. And again, I think the most important thing when you look at Godot, that's not the use case for Godot anyway. Godot is an engine that is, like I said, a jack of all trades engine. What sets Godot apart is that it is trying to be a very easy to use engine that you can very quickly build a game in, and has a very high ceiling for making games. Can't make everything out of the box, but what it can do, the games you can build with this without having to be someone who adds core features in order to finish your game. like a dungeon crawler, like, I've said this before many times, me as an XR person, as a VR person, I of course look at VR games. So I would say, you want to build a job simulator clone. You want to build a Beat Saber clone. It's already actually made. Holger made Beep Saber, I think he called it, which is a Beat Saber clone building Godot, runs on the Quest. Super Hots, which is actually one of the things that I want to do at some point in time as a demo, is create a single level Super Hot clone to play around with, time warping and stuff like that, slowing down time and that sort of stuff. There are so many games that are considered high quality games that you could easily make in Godot. What makes Godot special in my eyes is how easy and how sensible the way that you build games is. And that might not apply to everybody. There will be people who come into Godot and say, like, I don't get this structure. Why am I building a tree? What is a subscene? I don't like subscenes. I want to use prefabs. Well, for those people, Godot is not the right choice. Then you go to Unity, or you go to Unreal. You go to the engine that's structured in a way that works for you. But for the people who understand how to effectively use the scene structure in Godot, and wrap their heads around the way that GD script is built, I believe personally, my experience is that it's a very friendly, easy to use engine that allows you to build games really, really quickly. And that is always, that's the other thing that I find interesting about this discussion. Everybody's always talking about, is my game engine performant enough to build a AAA game? Well, it's the wrong question, right? Yeah, if you are a big studio who wants to build a AAA game with a crowd of 50 people, yeah, that's a valid question to ask. And depending on the game that you're building, Godot might not be your choice. But when you're looking at a 5-man indie team who wants to build a game like the dungeon game that I'm building here, but then input you build out, all of a sudden the question doesn't become, is Godot the fastest game engine to do this in? Is it going to perform the fastest? No, it's not. Unity is going to be faster. You build this dungeon crawler in Unity, it's going to perform way better. Is it going to be important? No. It's going to be noticeable? No. But what is important is, I bet you that if you're experiencing Godot, if you like the way that you work in Godot, you're going to build that game in half the time than if you would build it in Unity or in Unreal. That's a different kind of performance. And I don't mind trading some performance as far as how fast something executes for performance in how fast can I get to the end result, especially for someone like me. I'm a lone developer. Keep in mind, this game so far, it's not very far along. But outside of what I've been doing on stream, which is, 3 hours a week, of which I spend at least 2 hours just talking and maybe only an hour, max 2 hours actually developing, I'm building this. And I've already gotten this far. And how many streams have we? 3, 4 streams so far? That's the power of Godot in my eyes. And that's far more important, especially for indie developers. Exactly, Declan. You want to make great games. AAA is such a loaded word in many eyes. First of all, because an indie is an indie, they're not a AAA published studio. Can they not make good games? Jose, exactly. And that is, I think, the biggest message out there always is, especially for the people who complain about performance being the reason why they are scared to choose Godot over another engine. It's until you actually run into a performance issue and then properly investigate why you're running into that bottleneck. Until you get to that point, it's really the wrong question to ask. For a lot of people, they will never get there. Or when they get there, 9 out of 10 times, it is 9 out of 10 times it is a factor of not knowing what the way is to implement something in Godot, like doing way too much in GGScript, or not using the scene hierarchy properly, and wasting performance that way because you're trying to apply a Unity methodology to Godot, or you're trying to apply an Unreal methodology to Godot, and therefore not doing the right thing. Are there performance ceilings in Godot? Absolutely. Like I said before, you wanna create an RTS game with thousands of actors. You're gonna run into trouble. You're gonna run into limitations. But for many other games, you're never gonna run into troubles. And when you do, then usually it's a solution. And in the worst case, if you're really, really stuck, if you build this whole game and everything's working and there is this one thing that's hitting a bottleneck, okay, now you have the code in GGScript, you know what it's supposed to do. If you have if you really have that need and you really have, the game that's worth investing that in, okay, you go and make friends online on Discord and you find someone who can help you rewrite that part of the code as a GD native plugin or something like that, right? So yeah. Yeah, AAA as a genre, yeah, that could be a way to put it. And Ian, the link should now be in the description of the stream. So I try to commit my changes usually the day after I stream. So by the time that the stream ends, I'm going to bed. Sometime during the weekend, I try to do a little bit of cleanup on Saturday, and then I check everything in that we've done on stream. Tamansky, exactly. So yeah, I try to keep that updated. And my idea here now, when I look at this, and again, I find it important. I'm using what's her name? Kay Luce, I think her name is. I'm using her assets right now for this project. Luckily, they have CC0, so I felt a little bit about putting them into GitLab like that, but I think it's fine. All the links to her page are in there. It's I'm crediting her in the description, even though I don't have to on the CC0, but I really like the assets that she created for what I'm doing here. It's really good. Now, I do have some plans and some ideas that once this is working, I actually want to make a proper dungeon crawler game with this logic. That will probably have assets that are going to be proprietary to that game, or I might open source it at some point in time, but not until after it's released. But this is actually a nice way of still sharing the code, sharing a single level, maybe one or two levels once we have level loading in here, which eventually we'll need to tackle. But then this is also one of the reasons why I want to put this all into a plugin and make that nicely isolated. After tonight, this plugin is not going to be like, hey, you're going to put that add-on into your project and it's suddenly going to work. You're probably going to have breakage because right now everything is written without that in mind. I will need to do some cleanup before that is really cool. But that is the end destination that I want to get into, where you can basically dump that add-on into your project and you have all the building blocks to create a dungeon crawler. That's hopefully where I want to get once we're at the end of this series. And if I can somehow find the time, because I have been promising this, but time's been a bit of a luxury the last couple of weeks. I obviously I want to turn this into a tutorial series, just a condensed version of what we've done on stream. Grid maps for this time of game. I love grid maps. The only reason I chose not to use grid maps is because of the extendability of the map. Just the fact that it's easier to load in a new scene or to instantiate a new scene as a block. So for this type of generation, I think that just loading subscenes is a better idea. And also, I'm hiding the ones that we are moving too far away from, so as not to just have a whole bunch of objects in there that we're not really doing anything with. So yeah, for this, so far I felt that this works better. But don't know. But definitely, depending on what sort of game you are making, yeah, grid maps. I love what grid maps do, and having also looked at how they work behind the scenes, they're really efficient. They have their limits again. Then again, you can work around those limits by, let's say that I make a dungeon system that is not procedurally generated, or where I just generate a confined map that's not endless, because this is an endless, in theory, an endless map generator. You'll never, you'll never stop exploring. Let's say that I instead make, a dungeon game, or a RPG type game. Say something like Neverwinter Nights or something like that, or Diablo or something like that, where you have fixed maps. Absolutely, would I use grid maps for that? When you are building a fixed world, the only real limitation that I think grid maps have is if you have a really large world, I wouldn't make a single grid map. I would still break that world up into sectors, and each sector has a grid map, and that's what you use to construct your level with. But for something like this, yeah, where it's procedurally generated, I tend to like this better. All right, what was it doing? We were moving stuff. Well, Jan, the thing, of course, is with yours, that's the one with your cops and robbers cars that are running around, right? That's a fixed sized map, isn't it? Because that's really the thing that I'm getting at, is because this will always add another block to it. The way grid maps work is, behind the scenes, every block type that you create. So here it will be, you had your ground tiles and you had your pillars and stuff like that. Every block type will get a multi-mesh. So basically, for instance, the floor tiles, instead of them all being objects, you have one floor tile. And let's say that I've got 1,000 of those in my whole map. They are put into a multi-mesh. And they're instance rendered, which is incredibly efficient and incredibly fast, until you span them over too large an area. So that's where I said, like, break it up into sectors, and it'll work fine. Because again, there's no frustum culling when you have a grid map that's your entire world. That's really where, and again, that's an experimental thing, right? Where you need to see, okay, if I got this as one big grid map, is the fact that I'm instance rendering everything, is that saving me more than what I lose by not frustum culling all the objects? And that would then be a reason to say, well, you know what, I'm going to split my map into, a grid of grid maps. That's how you would optimize something like that. So yeah, so generally my consensus is that if you have a fixed map, you create your maps because you want them to specifically look in a certain way, I would use grid maps always. Because they're just so much, compared like this, for instance, where we're just instantiating everything in, at some point in time, we're going to hit limits. And again, that's why I am hiding rooms on too far. I don't destroy them. I want to keep them because I've generated that map. But if the player decides to go back, I want that to be there. But because we are adding more and more of these blocks in, yeah, at some point in time, that's going to start becoming taxing. And again, you know, that's I don't know where that limit lies. I don't know if that limit lies at 10,000 tiles or 100,000 tiles, or you know, we haven't gotten that far yet. So far, I haven't noticed any slowdown. Even before I started hiding the tiles that we were too far away from. And there's so much that we can improve if we do run into that as a bottleneck at some point in time. You know, there's so much that we can do here to optimize this. You know, one of the things that I've been thinking about, for instance, is that we might design these tiles in this way, but we add them to a grid map, right? Or, you know, we do something that, you know, it's easier to place things this way because we have overlapping objects, but we parse things, you know, as they are added into the scene instead of, you know, everything being in there. We just add things that we need. We might merge things together. All sorts of things to investigate if we even run into that bottleneck. We might never run into that bottleneck. So, and Nicholas, yes, that is my only beef. Is that the right word? I think that's my beef with open source software, not just with Godot, but I've got the same thing. You know, in my previous work, I used Postgres a lot, which is a database engine, one of the best database engines in the world, in my opinion. You know, it's taken over a huge market share from Oracle, which was always the #1 database. But when you then look at the tooling around it, there are so many rough edges. Why are there so many rough edges? Because you've got developers who are building this stuff, who are doing what they need to do in order to get their job done. And there's always a level of polish missing. And that's the same with Godot as well, is where you look at how open source works and how features generally get built, you have someone with a need who builds that solution to his or her needs and then contributes that code to an open source project. It's not developed to everyone's needs who could potentially use that functionality. It's made sure that it does what it needs to do to fill the needs of that person. And once it's then added to it, obviously, you know, we have a certain bar that we want people to reach. We have, you know, people who are just working on Godot, either, you know, funded like I am right now and like John is, and you know, some of the other guys, Clay, John, and Jay Fonts. But you also have a lot of contributors who are just doing this for fun, or they're doing this as part of, you know, their, you know, having time as they are studying in university or whatever, you know, whatever their reasons is to contribute to Godot. Luckily, we have a lot of people who are just doing it and who are trying to put that polish and finish into a lot of things. But you still have a problem, you know, it's like grid maps. You know, you'll have someone who is an expert in grid maps who's built that, put that in there, went as far as they went, and then went on to the next thing. And now you got other people who are then jumping in and sort of looking at that and trying to polish it up and make it better. It's a very different dynamic than when you have a traditional company that sells a product that therefore gets money in, that is able to pay a developer and say, this is what I want you to work on, and I'm going to keep paying you and keep telling you to work on this until it's perfect, or until it's at the point where, you know, and then having the funds to keep maintaining it. Open source works very differently. So yeah, you got to be willing to accept that and work with those rough edges. And if they really annoy you, become a contributor and help us polish them up and improve it. Yeah, CSG curves, Jan, is another one of those features where I love the feature. I hate the implementation. But I also know the reasoning behind it. And this is the other part, the other equation of open source that that people have a hard time understanding, because they keep comparing us to Unity and Unreal, and the fact that those companies have a very different dynamic in how they work and how they are funded and how they can have people work on this stuff. So when you look at CSG, the requirement for having that functionality has been there for ages. What was lacking is someone with the knowledge to actually build that functionality. So at one point in time, Redus, John, had some time left over. You know, he did have some ideas about how this should be implemented and what techniques should be used. And at that point in time, he says, okay, I'm going to take a week out of my schedule and I'm going to build the foundation of this solution. You know, like the first level of that solution. I'm going to put the bare minimum together to have, you know, the way that it works, to have the structure in place, to have a working solution for CSG meshes. But that's how much time I'm willing to spend on this. Now it's up to the community to pick this up and improve it and make it viable. And that never happened. Why does that never happen? Because it is something that not a lot of people have enough experience in to really run with it and you know, and do something with that. The other thing that is important when we're looking at CSG, and this is a really problematic thing. I wouldn't say problematic. It's a logical conclusion of what Godot is trying to be, and that actually goes into what Tomansky is saying. And what about merging meshes? Or, you know, my personal favorite, which I've actually worked on as a plugin, is procedurally generated meshes. You know, where luckily there's now a couple of other people who are also doing that sort of stuff, and there's some, you know, between Hungry Proton and Rod, isn't it? Yeah, you who is working on the. Well, I know that you've got the procedural texture stuff. But weren't you also working on some procedural level stuff? I can't remember. Anyway, there's a couple of people who are working with that sort of stuff, right? But the thing is, Godot is a game engine, and the one thing that Godot does not want and shouldn't want, and again, this is one of those frictions that are happening with the community. It doesn't want to be a modeler. It doesn't want to be, you know, something. You know, it's the same reason why there isn't a texture painter in Godot, because every feature that we add is another thing that needs to be maintained, that needs to be improved upon. With, you know, you get an ever increasing feature set that a relatively small group of core people need to make sure keeps working. It makes much more sense to say, well, there is already modeling software. There's a thing called Blender. Go and model your level in Blender and then import it into Godot and use it in Godot. You know, don't reinvent that wheel. We're never going to be as good as Blender. Why have that functionality in the engine? But then the flip side of that argument is having no functionality in the engine. Suddenly, for simple things, for prototyping, for just blocking out a level, to then, you know, give to an artist who is then going to create the proper assets in Blender. If you don't have those features in your game engine, you're slowing down the development process of a game. So it's one of the reasons when I came on board 3 years ago, one of my first things that I actually did, you know, while I was playing around with VR, I ran into the problem that I couldn't just add a box into my level or a sphere or something like that. So I added the primitive meshes. Up until that point, you know, if you would ask Redus, you know, Sean or you know, Remy, like, hey, why doesn't Godot have those things? The standard answer is because there's nobody who will be able to maintain that stuff. And you can create those things in Blender and then just import them. Why add them to the engine? I said, well, I'll add it in and you guys can evaluate it. And if you think it's something that's hard to maintain, then it won't end up in the engine. If you think it's something cool, it will end up in the engine. In the end, they liked what I did and it got added to the engine. And CSG meshes, is something similar. It's just, we needed that prototyping ability. We needed that basic functionality. Jean did the bare minimum amount of work. Well, I wouldn't say bare minimum. He did a little bit more than the bare minimum. But at that point in time, someone needs to run with it. Someone needs to move forward with it. And that's the thing that still missing. And I hope someone will step up. I hope that at some point in time, we will have a contributor who has the knowledge of doing these sort of things, who comes and says, you know what, I'm going to spend it. And there's actually someone working on some of the CSG stuff that I still need to test our work. I just haven't had any time for it. Someone who's starting to move the logic out of CSG nodes into resource nodes, which I always thought was a weird choice. Why that wasn't done from the start. So it's actually a PR that I really want to find some time to test, because I think it's actually a better way to do it. That said, CSG mesh is also something that I think is very suitable to be a plugin. Same with my procedural generation, right? I really want to find a time to get back to it. It might be once the dungeon crawler is done a little bit. It might be something worth doing on stream, building it out. Might actually do a stream just to showcase it. It's getting a bit old, but it'd be nice to play around with it and show how it actually works. I don't actually want that to be core functionality. You will never hear me make the argument that if there is an improved new version of GD Proc Mesh, that should be core functionality. I don't think it should. I don't think it ever should be. It should always be a plugin. But that's just my personal opinion. Let me catch up on chat again a little bit, because you guys are busy writing a lot of stuff and I'm just blabbing away here. I think I'm missing half the stuff. So yeah, I talked about CSG. Diablo uses a system where it connects nodes to build dungeon. Yeah, I have to admit that I don't know enough about Diablo. I played games like Neverwinter Nights, and one of the reasons why I got into this as well. I'm a big Fallout fan. I love Fallout 1 and 2. You could actually build something like that with these sort of techniques as well. So and there as well, because it's usually I think the maps there are fixed and not generated. I'd use grid maps for making a Fallout 1 or a Fallout 2 clone. And I think making a Fallout-like game, and actually the 3D version, like Fallout 3, you could probably make in Godot as well if you know what you're doing. Again, the limitation isn't the engine, it's the knowledge of the programmer. When you look at Godot, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76, you're starting to get into where those engines are built to a level that you might run into more problems. But I think Fallout 3 you could probably make in Godot if you know what you're doing. More rotation system, yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the grid maps, the UI of grid maps needs work. It's annoying and very unintuitive. Hey Stefan, how you going? Nice of you to join. All right. Making sounds yeah, the rotating my code shouldn't be hard at all, because it's just a setting on the grid cell itself. So it's just that doing a good UI for that. So that's the thing that I don't like. Zeal, exactly. That is a really serious issue that makes a lot of these discussions hard, and both ways, right? It is a valid reason for the core developers. that I now am included in, where we're saying, well, we're not too fond of having that as core functionality, because the moment that you add this in, it means more maintenance for us. And if the person who built it is going to disappear, if they're not going to commit their time after building it, it's a risk to the project. It's a risk to add something into the project, in which case we say, oh, just please build it as a plugin, because then the maintenance is in your hands. And of course, if someone like that builds it as a plugin and then doesn't maintain that plugin, it's still in the same place. It's still a dead piece of technology at that point in time, which will, either will be a problem for whoever uses that plugin. But at least there is more likelihood that someone else might take over that plugin or do something with it. But the flip side of that argument, which is also very valid and made by people, and I understand that very much, that there are things that are added to the engine that fall under that same category, where, and to be very honest, CSG meshes that we have been talking about falls under that umbrella, where you're saying, like, here is a clear case of a bit of functionality that has been asked for, that was built and was then sort of ending up in limbo. And that's exactly the thing that we are trying to avoid by saying, please don't add more features into the core unless someone's actually going to be running with it and maintaining it and improving it. So yeah, and in the end, and that's a valid criticism that some people are making. It feels very unstructured. Some things are added to the engine because of the cool factor, or because of who built it. Obviously, if Jean builds something, it gets added to the engine, whether it's a smart idea or not. And 9 out of 10 times, it's a smart idea. CSG is probably the only thing that I can think of where I'm sort of going like, maybe he should have followed his own advice and convinced someone to turn that into a plugin. I don't know. And that decision making, that choice, isn't always made for the right reasons. And that's normal, that's where I then disagree with some of the people who rightfully point that out and say, well, that's hypocritical. And, why is that not more structured? Where I'm kind of going like, well, that's open source for you. It's, in the end, you're dealing with a group of core people who are doing this as a labor of love in many ways. That's the one thing that I find actually interesting about Godot. Generally speaking, when you look at an open source project, when you look at Blender and Godot, I think Blender and Godot have a lot of in common in that way. And, Postgres, on the other hand, is the other side, right? Postgres is where, it came out of university and stuff like that. Some people who really knew what they were doing, wanting to create a really good database engine because they actually wanted to make a living with it. That's normally the way that open source goes. Everybody sort of goes like, freedom, and we want everything for free, and contribute to society. No, most people who start an open source project, I always see two different ones, right? One is people make a project open source because they're hoping to get help, which is 9 out of 10 times doesn't work. And then you have the people who, they're creating a project, they're creating a game engine, they're creating a database engine, they're creating something else. They're creating that because they themselves need it. And then at some point they decide, well, you know what? I'm actually not making money by this thing that I've created. I'm making money by what I do with this thing that I created. So when you look at a database engine like Postgres, the people who build Postgres make their money by making database applications or supporting those people who make database applications, and there was a clean case, right? You have Oracle. You don't want to know what an Oracle DBA makes per hour. It's insane. You don't want to know the contracts that Fortune 500 companies take out with, people who work on their Oracle databases. So when you look at Postgres, that's where you make the money, right? That's why they can make Postgres free, is because now you have this engine, this database engine, with which you can make database applications, and you make a ton of money making those database applications. That you make the database engine itself open source means that all of a sudden you have lots of other companies who are also making database applications, making lots of money with them, finding things that need to be improved, finding things that need to be fixed, and doing that work, contributing that back into the project, which then helps you, the person who is originally open sourced. Godot is no different, Godot, the idea behind it, or any open source game engine, the idea behind it is that the people who made the engine are actually wanting or needing that engine to make games that they can sell and make a living. That we're now at a point where, you have Jean, who made game engines in order to make the games that he wanted to sell and has been selling for years. That he at some point got at a point where he sort of went like, my career has moved me into a different direction. I now still have this game engine. Well, let's just open source it and see what happens. And he's now in a position where he's not actually making games anymore. He's just making a game engine. Other people are making games with it. And he's being funded because the other people who are making games that are contributing back into the engine, not with fixes and code, but contributing in the form of Patreon donations or grants or things like that. That's the way these things are funded. Now, why did I get to that discussion? I'm way off track right now, I think. So yeah, it's just a different dynamic. That's the thing. But in the end, the ecosystem that you create around an open source project as Godot is people make money making games with Godot, or people make money by hiring themselves out as Godot consultants for companies that make games with Godot in order to sell them. And then it's just a matter of scale. But in the end, again, I can't really remember why I got on this whole topic of this. But yeah, when you then look at something like CSG, I like that. I would love to see CSG meshes polished and perfected and part of the engine, part of the core, because I think level prototyping in the engine is incredibly important. I don't see CSG meshes in any shape or form as a tool to create the production version of your levels. It can be done, if it's well implemented. There are tons of games for which that would be completely sufficient. But I think that for the main purpose, it is, it's kind of like what I was doing with the space game, where I need to go back, where I'm fleshing out these levels by simple blocks and things like that. CSG mesh would actually be a much better choice in many of those cases. And I might actually go through a round of improving all the rooms to, instead of them being empty blocks, to actually put things in there. Here's the room for our main character. His bunk, his main room. Oh, it needs to have a bed. It needs to have a computer in there. It might need to have a desk in there. So with CSG, I can really quickly put those shapes together as just, very rudimentary shapes, so that I can actually have a room that is representative of what should be in there. And then I give that to an artist who then goes into Blender and makes proper molds. And then the thing that gets shipped in the long run is the actual molds that were created in Blender, not the CSG versions of them. CSGs were purely for prototyping. And yes, I think when you look at CSG Polygon and what we did there for creating the roads, that is one of those situations where I would like to do that to a level where I can take that into production. Because mapping out a track and then having to give that to an artist to import into Blender and do something with it, that's not really the workflow that I want. You know, for that sort of thing, I would actually want it to be good enough to be put into production. For that sort of thing, I think something like GD Proc Mesh is actually a better solution. And I never got that far in my videos, but I actually had a version of the track builder working in Proc Mesh, which is a much more efficient approach, giving much better meshes to work with than the CSG one does. What we're really missing, well, first of all, CSG is not far enough along. A lot of functionality missing. But the other thing which is really missing is there's not enough control on the path itself, on the spline, the shape 3D that we're using. But indeed, that is where I do agree that CSG should be at a point where that sort of thing can be production ready. But I think for the in general terms, it's really a prototyping tool. So, but yeah, it needs a lot of work. Anyway, we were moving stuff. Let's actually get a little bit of work done because it's already 11:30. Okay, so we moved all the basic room things. We've moved our auto load stuff. So let's move our, actually let's start with the characters. So I'm going to go and move this one into characters. Oh, shit. Don't save. Hope I didn't do anything there. Okay, that's my characters. Now, oops. I want to move these guys, and I'm just going to. Whoa! See, that's what I was afraid of. That is what I was afraid of. Okay. This is the one thing where. Oh, I hope I didn't lose something just there. Oh, now. I moved everything. All right. Okay. Okay, it went there. Okay, let's have a look. This is where Git does come in handy, tracking what the hell went wrong. So this is the only problem that Godot really has. That is a real pain in the butt. Is that if you have scenes in memory when you're moving files around, that tends to cause problems. All right, so scenes, characters, player character, and there these two guys went. So this is going to screw things up. We're going to have to do some fixing. Okay, hold on. That was a little bit more than I thought. So I'm going to do it like this. Where are we? Scenes, characters, player character. That one. The whole folder needs to move in here. So yeah, that definitely went really, really weird. All right, this is probably going to complain about some files that aren't loaded properly. There we go. That's fine. So, gonna open this. I might need to edit them behind the scenes. Come on, there we go. Fix dependencies, character scene. Open it up. Actually, before I do that, close. I actually need to first open the character scene itself up first. And fix this one first. Addons, functions. There we go. Okay. Boom. Now it's happy. Script is in place. Yeah, all good. Close one. All right. Yeah, this thing. Fix dependencies. Let's remove that. Very good. Okay. And now we need to go over here. Oh, and that's on the name. So that's all good. First time that's really cool that we have this working the right way. Okay. Let's close that. Let's save that. Close all. And now I'm going to move these into here. And because we're not really going to have anything else here, I'm happy to keep that all in the root folder. Now we need to fix this guy up. All right, it's happy. And now again, we're gonna go and move these into here. All right. And now we're going to go to our maze logic. And let's go and move that into maze. All right, so we leave that empty for now. Okay, what have we got here? That's just our highlights. That's all done with, yeah. I think that'll be good. All right, let's go and load our main scene. See if that's giving us any trouble. Looks like it's all there. Let's see if our game still runs. Kind of important too. No, it doesn't. And here is one place where we actually hadn't done this. Okay, that's interesting. I did not give these names. Did I do it? Here I did. But I didn't here. Okay. Last name. Oh. Underscore name. Enemy. Character. Which now means that we can simply replace that, and we don't have to worry about hard-coded paths in our file anymore. I do not like hard-coded paths. All right. Looks to me like we made our game work again. All right. So obviously this plugin is far from how it should be. It's just a step one, just to move all our core logic into these folders. It'll probably take a little while before we have this logic changed in a way that's really agnostic to our game, so that they can really be reused for other similar games. But it's a start. All right, let's have a look at what chat is all doing. Yeah, when you look indeed at anything more than prototyping, Blender is just great to use. So I'm a big fan of just having Blender open next to it, and doing anything more complex just in Blender, and then just importing those files. Now, one of the things that is interesting and has been discussed, and again, this is one of those things where there is some difference of opinion of, should it be in plugin, should it be in the core, should it be something else. There is, I think, a PR from Ernest, who's working that, where we're going the other direction, where we're taking a scene in Godot and we're exporting that to a format like GLTF, so that you can then import it into Blender and do stuff. Now, obviously, there is tons of stuff in a Godot scene that will not survive that export. The whole idea here is that if you're using primitive shapes, if you're using CSG meshes, if you're using anything else to prototype a level, is that you can export that prototype out to a data format like GLTF, import that into Blender, give it to an artist, and then have the artist create the proper level for you. And then obviously whatever get exported there is going to be added into your game in the proper way. It's not meant to be, like you're editing the scene in Godot or anything like that. And indeed, I see exactly. I personally believe that prototyping logic is very important because the workflow is just much easier. But Godot is not to the point yet where the UI is good enough to make that sufficiently good for many situations. So right now, the workflow of just doing everything in Blender, except for the very basic, simple things, is still the better one. But I do think that if there are people who are going to start contributing and making, let's say, something like CSG meshes, probably, or like I said with my procedural mesh plugin, if someone would be doing that. And again, there are people, right? There are a number of plugins made by different people that allow you to quickly put levels together. And the better they get, the more you can do in the Godot editor itself. I do not believe that it should ever replace doing proper asset creation in a tool like Blender. Godot should not become a 3D modeler. I think that's just that's a waste of effort. Just means that we have a whole bunch of stuff to maintain that other programs do tons better than we do, and it's just not worth it. Roberto, depends a little bit on the game that you want to make and what you want to make with it, and it depends on what platform you're on. If you are on PC and you are targeting Steam VR, Steam XR, I think the OpenXR plugin is at a point that you can already use it. And that's kind of if you're currently contemplating OpenVR, then probably the OpenXR plugin is already at a point where you could start using it. That said, there are far more people who are currently using the OpenVR plugin. So there is far more feedback so far about what works good and what does not. OpenXR is still very new, so you're more likely to run into bugs and problems. However, the other thing that's really important is unless you're using stuff that is specific to the OpenVR platform, like, for instance, using the render models, so where the controller models are grabbed from SpirV itself, or the finger tracking that we added not that long ago. If you use those and you would later want to switch to OpenXR, you're going to have to redo a couple of things because obviously that will be implemented in a different way in OpenXR than it is implemented in OpenVR. But if you use all the standard approach, like for instance, if you look at the tutorials that I did on weapons, just using the Godot XR tools library, if you stick to that methodology, they're interchangeable. So you could start with OpenVR, have the stability of that plugin, and then when OpenXR, when the plugin becomes better, you just switch over. I do think that is a feature, by the way. Even looking at how the adoption of OpenXR is, I think that in the long run, OpenXR is probably going to replace OpenVR as the API to talk to Steam XR or Steam VR. Tool You imagine corner reshape them. And yeah, no, well, I've been there, done that. I've made plenty of things in my time that looked really cool and I was really happy about, and then found out it was more trouble than it was worth. Moved on. Yeah, you can export CSG to object now. That was something that was recently added. That's right. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Better padding, zooming, etc. in the UI. Yeah, I don't really have too much problems with the panning and zooming. Kind of works good. Once you do have to change a few settings. At least I like it better that way. Of course, I can't find them right now. 3D editor. So the changes that I always make is I make sure that I've got my pan modifier set to shift, my zoom modifier to control, although I'm using my scroll wheel for that. But I think it's that shift for pan modifier is pretty important. You can put one for orbit, but again, I think that is I don't have emulate 3-button mouse on anymore. That used to be really important. I wonder when that changed. When that was no longer relevant. Probably because I now have a mouse with a third button. Because when I started using Godot, I was actually on a Mac with a 2-button mouse. And you couldn't do this. This is the third button. Allows you to orbit. And then, of course, things like when you've got something selected and you press F to center on it. So if I'm on the night, F, center on it. That sort of thing. The other one, which is a lot of people don't know about, is Shift F, which then gives you AWSD control to fly around your level. So I'm just using my AWSD, and I'm using my mouse to just look around. I should have a hand camera, shouldn't I? And then press Shift F again, and you get into the normal mode again. So there are a bunch of hidden gems in the UI, but yeah, and again, Blender had the same for years, and I still have to. I have to get back into newer versions of Blender. I'm still stuck at 2.7, which still had the awful UI. And of course, they redid a whole bunch of that. I think it's one of those things that needs to improve. Blender to Godot workflow is getting the same visual results in both engines. Absolutely, they are very different in their target. Godot is a game engine. Its render engine is optimized for performance. Blender's render engine is optimized for the visual side of things, pretty pictures. So they have differences in the way that they do their lighting and the coloring, and it's hard to get them to match up. And yeah, that gives problems. What I personally believe is that the best workflow is to create your assets in Blender, but then do the rest in Godot. But even then, it is a real problem when you're modeling an asset in Blender and you've got certain spotlights on it, and it looks really good and the colors look really great, and then you import it into Godot and it looks different. The color balance is different, color grading is different. Obviously the first protocol which everybody falls over, and for all the right reasons, is if you create a brand new scene. I can't do it here because my background is black. I'm completely relying here on spotlights. But obviously you have your beautiful panoramic sky, not panoramic sky, the procedural sky, which is completely blue, and therefore gives your whole scene this nice blue tint. Everybody hates for all the right reasons. It isn't until you add a light in and you set up a couple of things, and then you go into your default environment and you start playing around with your tone map settings, which here are still completely default. So you start playing around with those, and you start playing around with exposure and white balance, and then suddenly it starts looking good. So yeah, the OpenXR plugin works beautiful on Windows. That's one thing that I have been working on for the past couple of months. So actually, all the last streams that I did with my space game were all OpenXR. So yeah, works on Windows now. The only thing is it doesn't work with the Microsoft mixed reality SDK, because that's DirectX only. That's the only limitation on Windows. So you have to run either through SteamVR or through Oculus. And then the Oculus one is still a bit broken. There's a couple of things that Oculus does differently around pausing your game when you're in your game and the user switches back to their home environment or their settings environment. That's when things get a little bit shaky. So there's still some bug fixing to do around that. But on the Steam VR, it's actually pretty stable. So yeah, definitely works. You can hold right and left click. Really? I did not know that. That is really cool. Okay, thanks for the tip. Because now we have, with the middle finger, we can orbit, and then we hold both, and we go. A little bit more dangerous, I think, because it's easy to get wrong. Why is my... What's this? I think I did just screw something up as a result. Because that's a problem, of course. It's easy to click wrong on something. Oh, no. That's my map. That's my map camera, which is an orthographical core, whatever. I can never pronounce that word. Camera. Okay. So, let's go back to here. I think that is good enough for now for that task. All right, are we going to look at the attack logic or our AI logic? I don't want to spend too much more time, so we're going to make a start on that one. Yeah, so yeah, if your mixed reality SDK is your default XR runtime, that's the only one that it has problems with. And that's purely because Microsoft does not support OpenGL and Vulkan. They only support DirectX. I am looking into that. I'm talking to several people about some options. There is a build of Godot. Obviously, when you build for Universal Windows Platform, which is the version that you can use to run Godot on the Xbox, then it's using the library called Angle to do a OpenGL to DirectX translation. So it runs actually on DirectX, even though the code is all OpenGL code. It's just a support layer in between. That, however, hasn't been maintained since 2015. That used to be a Microsoft thing, but it's switched over to Google. Google picked it up and they're using it now, so they have the leading version. But Godot is still using the Microsoft one, which has been pretty much discontinued by now. So there is someone working on making the Google version work with Godot. And I just need to find time to play around with that, see if I can get that to work, see if I can help out with that. Because if we can run Godot in DirectX with that, and it has enough functionality to work together with OpenXR, we could potentially support mixed reality. And if that works, we could potentially run Godot on a HoloLens. That would be cool. That I would love to see. So yeah, I hope to find time for that. Okay, so I want to start with some basic AI for my enemies. Now, in my space game, we build an entire state machine around that. I'm not sure if I want to go that far here or whether I want to keep it simpler here. I am tempted to keep it simple for now. But there's also part of me that thinks that I might be I might be cutting myself short if I do. I think that we're just going to experiment with some basic logic of our dragon. And then depending on what experience we get out of that, we're going to decide what the actual implementation is. So let's start with building something with the idea that we'll eventually throw it away, that we're just experimenting. Now, the idea that I have when we're looking at our dragon, and again, I'm just going to add that logic to the dragon itself. Because I think the AI that we need here is going to need to be more like a decision tree instead of a state machine. Because basically when we're looking at, so actually I'm going to go and run our game first so that we can more easily talk about this. So when we're looking at our dragon, when it's our dragon's turn to do something, the dragon has a choice between two actions and maybe doing those in succession. One is that if the dragon is too far away from a character to attack the character, but he's close enough to the character that he knows where the character is, we want the dragon to move towards the closest player-controlled character that we have. But if he's close enough to attack, we want him to perform an attack. Now, obviously, if he needs to move first, if he has enough points left, he might make an attack right away. That's something that we need to decide on whether we want to do that or not. So let's build that logic, but build it really simply. And the way that I want to do this, and again, we're going to just do it on the dragon itself, even though this logic eventually needs to end up in our enemy scene itself. But for now, it's going to be on our dragon. And what we're basically going to create here is we're going to create two area nodes. Attack, detection. And we're going to move detection. All right. So they're both going to be set up that they are only going to react to friendlies, because we only care to know about whether the player-controlled characters are in range. And now we're going to add a sphere collision shape to this one. All right, sphere shape. There we go. And I'm going to make that, let's do 4 for now. So if our player character is anywhere within this shape, we're going to attack that player character. If there's no player character in that shape, we're going to go to our move detection. So here, we're going to go a bit further. Let's say that we double the range, 8. So if our player is anywhere within that range, we're going to move towards the closest player. I just want to go and bring our dragon in here. Okay. Oops. No, our dragon. I just want to see, is that indeed the, because he's going to be over there. Yeah, I think that's going to be good enough. So, let's delete this guy. Okay. Okay, so let's go and have a look at our code here. So our default logic when we became the current character is that we immediately go to the next character. Now we want to change that for our dragon because we actually want to perform our logic there. Now before we do that, I want to have a look at our global state here. Okay, so that's emitted there. Yeah, that's okay. That's gonna work. Okay. There you go. So we're just going to go and implement this logic really hard-coded. All right. I'm gonna cheat and have a look at that. Let's see. Yeah, nothing there. Okay. So there is a function get overlapping bodies, which gives us a list of everything that's inside. Now, with some of the other places, we are reacting to our has entered and has exited signals because we wanted to actually trigger logic when something happens. But in this case, our character moving into the range of our dragon, we don't react on right away. Or not yet, anyway. We might do something with that at some point in time, but not at this point in time. So we don't really care about knowing when that happens. We just care about knowing that the character is inside. So we could keep track of that ourselves, but in this case, we don't really need to. We have our area already doing that for us. So we're first going to go and get our overlapping bodies that are in range. Okay, and I'm going to say not empty. So we're going to implement our check logic over there. Don't care about you anymore. And then at the end, we're going to return because that is the action that we perform. If none of our enemies, or friends in this case, friendlies, are in attack range, we're going to see if anybody is in movement range. We're going to tend to move. And if none of those are valid, we're just going to go on and forfeit our turn. So that's the basic setup of our AI logic for our dragon. Let's start with implementing our move. So in this case, we're going to have to figure out where to move to. So in this case, I'm just going to say that our dragon can move one cell at a time. So we need to figure out, first of all, who's the closest. And second, we need to figure out if we can move closer to our character. Now, we know that they're not close enough. So in theory, we should always be able to move. I'm not going to do pathfinding here. I'm going to keep them really dumb. All right. So first thing we need to figure out who's closest. And that should return a player character. In theory. Implement that in a minute. Oops. Out. Yes. Closest. What? Up. Far. Fun. I am getting tired. It's late. Enrich. All right. So. So just start with the first one. Global transform of origin. Take away our origin. And we get the length. All right. Okay, we're making a bit of an assumption here that they are indeed all player character bodies, which it should be because of our what you call it? Our physics layers. But we might need to add something a little more secure at some point in time. Okay, so we figure out how close this guy is to our dragon. And if this guy is closer, he becomes the new closest. There we go. And there we go. That in theory should give us our closest character. All right. Okay. I'm just going to put this here or else we're going to get stuck. Okay. That's going to become closest. Form. Origin. Take away. All right, so that is going to give us the direction into which we need to move. I think I'm going to want to normalize that one. Okay. Oh, hey, Jispo, how you going? I did that on your stream the other day as well. Although for me, it was watching your stream and having lots of bandwidth issues for some reason that day. I think it was because of all the weather issues that we were having here. So, yeah, I could only catch about 10 minutes of your stream and had to go as well, which was a bit of a shame because it was very interesting. Welcome, enjoying. I hope for the few minutes that you're here, you'll enjoy yourself. All right, so now we know the direction that the dragon needs to go to in order to move towards the closest character, but we don't want him to move, an exact, it has to be a cell. So either a cell to the left or any one of those. So we're going to have to figure out which of those cells it is. All right. I'm actually going to go and do a print here first. Let's see. We're just going to print out what we found here. And then, again, we're just going to go to the next character. All right. So, oh yeah, that was all the output of our highlight code. That's right. So I'm gonna actually skip this guy. All right. So it's found for this guy because these guys are all not close enough, but this guy's actually already in range of our mage. So he's finding our mage and it's in direction -1, 0, which makes sense. So let's move our mage here. Okay, the mage is still... Okay, so negative is that way. Positive on the Z is that way. So I'm assuming negative and Z is up. All right, that's cool. All right. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go and figure out what the angle is and dividing that by the number of sides that we have, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So divided by 8. And that should then give us, 1, 2, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 as a direction. And that will allow us to do a lookup. At least that's the assumption. Let's have a look if that will work. All right. So I'm going to make that an angle. Now we have a cool function in our vector 2 for that. Angle. And actually, I want to do an angle 2, vector 2, 1, 0. All right. Next. Okay, so our mage. Oh, I didn't output it. I want to output that one. Oh, and that's going to be in radians. Okay. Enjoy your breakfast before bedtime, Gispo. All right. That to big. Let's just go and make that human. Actually, I don't want to put that here. I want to put that in my... I want to put that here. Oops. Not quite sure what keyboard combination I used there, but that was not the right thing. All right. Next. All right. So -180. That sounds about right. So I want to go move over there. Now we're too close. You know what? I'm gonna make my life easier, and we're gonna forget about attacks for a minute. All right. And then obviously, oh, yeah, you can't save a file when the game is running because it keeps it locked. All right, so let's go move this guy over here. All right, so 35. 90. Okay, but this one was negative. Okay. All right. And that's 0. Then 145. Okay. Now minus 45. Okay. So I think, not 100% sure if that's correct. All right, let's move them over there. That's where we still had a right thing. So yeah, 135. Close enough. Perfect. All right, cool. That's good enough for me. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to add 22.5 degrees to this. And this is just to prevent rounding issues when we do a divide. Right? And just to show you guys what that means, what I just did, is if I go to my, so this is my 0 point. You see that the angle is now 22. Oops, I went a bit too far. And now it's 67.5. And the reason why I'm doing that is because if I'm going to be exact, the rounding might make it slightly less than 45 degrees, or slightly more. Now, more is not a problem. Slightly less than 45 degrees will break our logic, especially around the edge cases of 0. And this will solve that. Now, let's actually do that on the angle itself. So now we're going to divide it by, actually I do want this in a different variable, because I'm going to cast that as that. So this one, if you vector 3, this one should be a player character. This one should be a float, just to make absolutely sure that all works. And I want to floor this. Does int floor automatically? Let's try that. Let's just go for int. I think int will floor it automatically. Let's see if that works. Okay. It helps if I actually also upload that, so I can see what it is. I think Jitspo just left, Jean. I think he went to get some breakfast and then sleep. All right, let's try this again. So that's slice 1. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so int rounds does not floor. I don't want to, I'm assuming that this is going to do an automatic cast, but we'll see. Yes, I do render engine work, and I do VR work on Godot itself. Ooh. Okay, this. I've got two names in the chat that I have no way of knowing how to pronounce it. One is in Arabic. Welcome. I'm very sorry I don't read Arabic, so I can only say welcome. And slash slow sorry, I'm butchering your name as well, but welcome to the stream. All right, Jan, welcome back. Glad that your video is rendering. Okay, let's see if this now works better. Here we go. Still slice one, so that's interesting. Why would that, even though I'm flooring it? Why would I go to 1? Because I didn't change this to 45 degrees. This is in 45 degree slices, not in 22.5 degree slices. All right. Possibly casting it to int would have been enough, but now we have slice 0. If we go there, he's on slice 1. Oops. Didn't quite mean to do that. Slice 2. And that should be 3. That should be 4. Oops. Not did do it right. That should be 4, 5. Let's see if this is 6. It is. And that should be 7. Perfect. Okay. So we go from 1, 0 to 1, minus 1, 0, minus 1, minus 1, minus 1. Okay. Okay. 1, 0. Let's actually put that on a new line. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, it's going to be minus 0, up. Minus 1, minus 1. Minus 1, 0. 1, 1. 1, 0. 9, 1, 1. I think. All right. Direction is slice. All right. Let's add that in. Let's see if we did that the right way around. And then we could actually make a move. And that's 1, 0. Cool. And that should be minus 1, minus 1. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, cool. All right. Now, if we're over here, okay, that is okay. Are we still in range here? Yeah, we are. Minus 1, minus 1. So when we're there, we're going to go move there and then there. But if we're here, we're going to go move there. Okay, and then obviously we can't move there. So that's interesting. That is interesting. Because while this might have done all this work for nothing, because right now our dragon is going to get stuck on this corner while he should be moving here to get closer to our character. So the other option is that we do use our A star for our to figure out where to move to, but we just use the very first entry of our A star. And that means adjusting our A star logic to say, I want to move to where this character is, but I don't care about the last cell because obviously I can't move onto my character. Yeah, that's always the hard thing with names, isn't it? You know, especially internationally. It's funny how those things work. Is it 23 more minutes or 23 more videos? Game's coming along well, Drensoft. I'm just figured out that I'm going down the wrong path with this. While that was a nice little exercise in figuring out which direction we need to move, it's not good enough. So, bye-bye logic. Okay, instead, we're going to use our A star, but we need to make some new logic for our A star. And it's actually something Yeah. So in our A star logic, where is our A star? Here we go. Costs. So we're going to ignore that on the last one. Okay. Or let's see. All right, actually ignore last cell. Give this a default, I think so. Okay, so here we're going to do and not ignore last cell. So if our last cell, if we can ignore that, we're going to ignore that that is not empty. All right. Get lowest costs. Da, da, da. Okay. Okay, two cells always that. So we can actually say ignore last cell. Which means that we need to go and put that in here. Oh, no, that's not the right place to put it. Get lowest costs. Ignore last cell, okay. I can go in there. I can go in there. So here, if cell and not ignore last cell, or cell is not equal to. So if it's occupied, okay, I think that is the way that we are going to skip that one, which is cool. And now we're going to go and do also pass that into our make path list. Where's my make path list? Here. Okay. Now what we're here going to do is if not be ignore, oops, or cell not equal, oops, not equal to B2 cell, then we're, oops, hang it in. There we go. So now we should never get our last cell in our array, and we should be able to, okay. That should allow us to use our do a star for this logic. Okay, let's see if that works. All right. Let's look at where we are using this before. All right, bye Sam, bye Jan. Glad you guys could join us for a bit again. All right. Let me go and copy that. So, oh, we need to get the cells. Okay, hang on. Let's have a look at our character logic. Okay. Oh. Yep. Yeah, that's gonna go wrong because we haven't finished it yet. So let's go get our path. And in this case, we are going to go from where we are. It's going to be in cell. And then we're going to go to closest. Dot yeah, in cell. Then in this case, we don't actually really care about the action points. In this case, it's just going to become a limiter. And reset true. And let's just go and print our path. Okay. All right. So here it says it goes to that. All right, cool. I'm going to assume that those are 1, 2, 3 for that one. Let's go over here. That one. I'm guessing. I don't know which cells those are, but we're guessing that that's what it's going to be doing. All right. So what we're going to do now is if we have a path. Okay, is that going to return null or is that always going to return a valid path? I think it's always going to Yeah, empty array, empty array. So we always return an empty array if we don't have anything. And here, okay, so we can trust that this is an array. And here we can say empty. But if it's not empty, we're going to do something. We're not going to worry about that just yet. Okay. We are closest. There we go. And then if we found on, okay, so let me look here. All right. Okay, so a tween is actually on our. All right. That would be nice to have that. Okay. So we got a tween on here. Okay, first of all, I want these functions to actually be my character strip. Okay. So move character, rotate character, perfect. That's all good. But I think it's also okay. Pivot isn't there. Okay, so you know what? I'm gonna go and do this. I'm not removing it yet, but we will in a minute. Character from, I think that's a vector 3. Move 2, so vector 3. And there we go. Okay. And then move speed, I think, is going to be yeah. Move speed. You know what? We're gonna make that. Is going to make that something that we're going to put over here. So move speed no longer is needed over there. All right. So that should now mean that we can just go and actually I need to call it tween move character. Because we might have other tween functions at some point in time. From 2. There we go. Move from, move to. Cool. Okay. Sweet. And now we can just simply reuse that in our dragon character. By just using our first one. Oops. And now that we're done, we go to our next character and we return. Cool. Why did I make you sweat, November Dev? And Ryan's attacking us with some space aliens. All right, let's see if our dragon is going to move. Oh, okay. Screwed that up somehow. Okay, why would that be going the wrong way all of a sudden? Your character. Yeah, we're going to be using our pivots. Why would that change? One thing that I also want to do. Yeah, if you go overboard with your loops, then that does tend to help. All right. So why are we suddenly going backwards? Our move is right. But suddenly our angle is going the wrong way. What did we do that explains that difference? Why would that suddenly be the wrong way around? Well, yeah, obviously I can turn it around. That's not the problem. But why did it suddenly break? All right. Okay. I just want to see if we change something. Global. Next. I got that the wrong way. How the heck did I? Yeah, that explains it. Two. That is called not paying attention when you make changes. All right. Now he's walking the right way. So now if I go to him, and my dragon moves one closer. And moves one closer. And now he stays there. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to add my attack detection back in, even though we're not actually attacking yet, because we don't have a way to attack just yet. Oops. No. Wrong will lead you. So now he should move closer, but not too close. So let's go and move over there again. So he moves closer. But now he stays there because he's in attack range. He can attack now. Ah. That reminds me. Why is this on a... Anyway, I was looking for this one. If you find yourself in the company of a halfling and an ill-tempered dragon, remember that you do not have to outrun the dragon. You simply have to outrun the halfling. I used to have a t-shirt with that on it. Missed that t-shirt. Gotta get a new one of those. And that is very true here as well, because eventually, you know, we're gonna have different AP stats for all our characters. So as long as your AP is higher than one of the other characters, the dragon's gonna go for the one with the lowest AP, because that one's gonna be the one that's gonna be closest. It's 12:30, almost 1. I think we're gonna leave it there. We're gonna deal with the attacks of the dragon next stream. Because obviously now, if he has a turn, if he's close enough. Yeah, I think indeed we can make him do his little attack animation, and then spit out a fireball or something like that. So that's gonna be cool. So if he's far enough, we're gonna make a move. If he's close enough, he's going to fire. I don't think we're gonna go to a point where if he moves close enough that he fires immediately. I think that would be nice to have another turn. So in this case, obviously, I would go there and I would already attack my dragon, or the dragon. And in that respect, we might have just made the dragon not powerful enough. We'll see. Actually, that's going to be fun. If I move here, and I go next, and both of the dragons are going to close in on this guy. Oh no! Now the both dragons are attacking. So yeah. Oh, we went slightly past that. That's interesting. Still close enough to the dragons. Yeah, the dragons are... Oh, hey, I didn't want you to move away. You're fleeing. All right, I think our knight is just putting into practice what we were just talking about outrunning the dragons. You just need to be faster than the other guy. Snacky treat. Chocolate cookies. Join the dark side. We have cookies. All right. But I think in principle... Oh, we still have one match. Okay. Oh, no, that's... Oh, we're far enough away that the dragons aren't following anymore. Is that it? I think our dragons are tired of us. Oh, okay. Does that mean that... I think I... Okay, so the dragons don't take up a spot yet in the A star. Okay, that's something that we need to fix. Okay, that's something that I would still want to do tonight. All right, where are we? So when we look at our player characters, okay, that's interesting. No, character. Okay, so entered. Yeah. How did that work? Cell is occupied. Okay, so look at cell. Okay. Let's see if our... No, our enemy is in there. So is our dragon not set up correctly? No, he's in the right place. Collision shape is a box shape, so that's good. Yeah, that will work, Jan. That might work. All right. So. Oh yeah. Oh, has method cell entered, cell exited. Okay, is that on here? Yeah, cell entered, cell exited, so that's going to be working. So that's on character, so it definitely should have that. Yeah, so that is 2. So how... Oh, yeah. No, that's not possible. I get it. How did my 4 little dragons both get into the same cell? I just need to... Okay, why did you... How did he move through there? That doesn't make sense either. Because he goes from there to there and actually... Yeah. That's another one to solve. Or is that just an acceptable issue with diagonal movement? I trick these guys to go into the same cell again? Yes, I can. And the other thing is what I find really interesting. Is that they seemingly were moving at the same time. While they should be moving one after the other. All right, let's see if we can create that situation again, but this time we put a breakpoint in. Okay. Let's see what happens. Let's see. Oh. I should have moved one more. Okay. Now the closest, that should be a mage. Ah, no, that should wait until. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. A yield didn't work. Why did I yield not work? Why did I yield not work? Okay. Tween all completed. Do we have a tween all completed? No, that's the signal, isn't it? Character, tween, node, tween all completed. Connects. Okay. Okay. Wait, 4. Let's see. Hi, Luke. How you going? Open Sky City. Please teach me aesthetics. You're asking the wrong person. I'm horrible at aesthetics. Okay, well, the fact actually, you can see that we're now on this guy. And we're... Oh, and now I get why it's moving through things. Because you can see before, all completed after. It's not waiting for it. Why is it not waiting for it? We're doing something wrong here. Yields. Why is my yield not working? yield. Stops the function execution and returns the current suspended state to the calling function. From the caller, call resume on the state to resume execution. Invalidated state within the resumed function. Yield returns whatever was passed to the resumed function call. If passed an object and a signal, the execution is resumed when the object emits the given signal. In this case, yield returns the argument to emit signal. The signal takes only one argument or an array containing all the arguments passed to emit signal. You can also use yield to wait for a function to finish. Okay. So that's on an object. So why is that not working? Our tween node. This is weird. This almost feels like yield is broken. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that would be a course that I would watch, Jan. Absolutely. The racing game is still around. I'm just working on this for now. Yeah, it is an odd function, but it should do what I want it to do here. It should wait until that is emitted. Unless someone broke it. Oh, that's visual training. All right. Yeah, that's exactly the thing that we are doing. Oh, okay. So that's not what we're using. Okay, so yeah, my start is over here. And then I just want to wait until tween all completed is called. Because we've got two tweens. That just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that's basically what it's all doing, but this is supposed to stop it, right? So here our tween starts, and it can't do anything after that. If it would stop here, if it would not continue here, then, you know, well, one thing that we could do, which we could definitely try and see if it works. That is very dirty. Where is the example of that? Evil Chair Slayer Godot 4 will be released when it's ready to be released. It's not even in beta yet, so we shall see. All right. See, that wants to work. Now, you can immediately see it does them all. I think yield's broken. Let's see what happens if I do this. I think yield is broken. I think someone broke yield. I absolutely think someone broke yield. Because that definitely should work, because I've played around with that before. And that is something we are not going to solve tonight. I think we're going to go and leave it there. Oof. Yeah, I've had that happen, Jan. Oh, really? So you reckon that yields in this function would... Okay, well, that's... Okay. Let's put it over there then. And then the same thing in our dragon. Let's see if that fixes our problem. It does. Now they're taking turns. All right, that's just super weird. Okay, well, thanks, my friend. That was a really, yeah. It doesn't really stop code execution. It's a trick. I know it does something funky inside. Um, but I didn't know that it would actually. Hmm. I guess it kind of makes sense. Can't say it's pretty. Putting it over there. I wish there was a real way to hold it there, but I guess that might be a little bit too much to ask. No, not 38 to get to this point because all the other ones were about the space game that I was building, and then we did 1 or 2 episodes about the racing game for the tutorial section that I did. I think about 4 that we've been working on the dungeon. So yeah. Okay, so one of the other things that I need to solve is when I press next and I actually have a valid path at that point in time, it actually still executes the path. See, when I like this, and my character actually goes that way. So that's definitely something to solve as well. Yeah, yield is not sleep. We really need a sleep function, don't we? All right. Well, we learned something about how yield works. Because I remember that yield sort of rejigs the method that you're currently in. So yeah, I guess that's why it doesn't work when we do yield in the next step. Yeah, exactly. It's something like this because we're looping through something. I guess with the dragon you could do it because we're just doing one, and we could just do on the tween or on the all completed, then go to the next character. But then when we look at our player character, we really want it to wait until it finishes. So the only other option is to store our path. Actually, our path is stored, isn't it? So yeah, we could rewrite this instead of using a while loop, is that it actually triggers this. And then on the tween all completed, we have it react to if there's still something in the path, it goes to the next. If there's nothing in the path, then it does a finish move. It's actually not a bad idea. Okay, last thing to do for tonight is solve this not with yield, but solve this with tween completed. Extended class or whatever we want to call it. Okay, cool. So let's start with implementing this for the more difficult one, which is this guy. Actually, no, I'm going to go over here. Boom. Okay. No. Move. Next. I actually want to go and do full. Actually, we're going to return true here. I think. You know what? No, we're not going to return bool. We're just going to do move next. Boom. Okay. And this is going to be move next. And now I'm going to go and go and throw this whole thing into move next. Now we're going to say if current move empty and current action points bigger than 0, then we're going to go and move to the next one. Else, we're finished. Okay. And then we're doing that on tween. So what's going to happen right now is we perform our action. We say we're moving. We're making our path invisible. We're starting our move. We're playing our animation. And we're calling move next. So this is the first time we go into move next. Boom. Let's say there's 2 points in our path. So we're going to check. Is our path empty? No, it's not empty. Cool. Do we have enough action points? Yes, we have enough action points. We go to the next cell and remove that cell from our path. So that's what pop front does. It removes it and returns that top entry. We decrease our action points and emit our signal so that we know that we're one action point less. And now we start our tween to do our movement. And that's all we do. We finish. Now, when our tween finishes, our signal hits and we call move next again. In this case, we find our next entry. Again, lower our action points, start our tween, and we finish. Now our tween is finished. Move next again. We come back in here. Now our current path is empty. We therefore go to our finish move call and we finish off. So let's see if we still can move. That looks pretty good. Perfect. Okay, let's do the same thing for our dragon instead of the yield. So in this case, we simply say that when our tweens are completed, we just go to the next character. All right. Boom. There we go. That's a little dangerous in both cases. We probably need to check whether we're actually moving. But for now, I'm happy about that. Okay, let's go and get this guy over here. I expected that guy to move. And I knows. Yeah, they both moved. Move one, move two. Okay, they're taking turns. So, okay, now we solved our logic without using yield, but we're actually using our completion signal properly. I think that that does the trick quite well. All right. All right, Rashad, sorry. I think that's it, guys. It's past 1 a.m. for me. I think that's way past my bedtime. Been a tricky stream, this one, with some nice upgrade issues at the beginning. So again, sorry for the late start, everybody. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how far we got with this. So next time we'll start working on the attack of our dragon, and then we need to start thinking about, do we do this? Do we move this code into our enemy character level, or do we do something with the state machine instead? Or do we do it like this, where I don't actually like this, because we're gonna have a lot of different enemy characters that all need to have similar AI logic. It's just that we need to have the ability to make different decisions. And we need to make sure that the dragons leave some stacks. So yeah. I think we're actually going to add a decision tree thing here. That will be fun to do. Once we have the attack working, we're going to change this to a decision tree. All right. Good progress. I am very happy where we are. All right, guys. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. And again, sorry for the late start, but you know, technical difficulties is what it is. So yeah. Thank you all for watching. I hope you'll join me again next Friday. Yeah. See you guys next time. All right. Bye-bye.